Welcome to our channel HD Rare Coin 111, your go-to spot for uncovering the incredible world of rare US coins. If you've ever wondered if your old pennies, nickels, or dimes are worth more than face value, you're about to find out. In today's video, we'll be exploring some truly rare coins and their shocking values. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. So let's jump in. Top 1. Have you ever gone digging through your loose change or an old piggy bank and wondered if there might be a hidden treasure right in the palm of your hand? Imagine stumbling upon a coin so rare, so unique, that collectors all over the country would pay a small fortune just to own it. Today, we're taking you deep into the world of one of America's most fascinating coins, the 1943 Jefferson Nickel. It might look ordinary to the untrained eye, but this coin holds a story that dates back to the heart of World War II and carries a mystery that could make you richer than you ever imagined. Let's rewind to the early 1940s, a time when the world was engulfed in a global conflict. The United States was deeply involved in the war effort, and that meant rationing resources wherever possible. Nickel, which was normally used in the production of 5-cent coins, suddenly became a valuable metal for military manufacturing, used in everything from tanks to airplanes. The U.S. Mint had to make a quick decision, and that's when they introduced a new wartime composition for the Jefferson Nickel. Instead of the usual 75% copper and 25% nickel blend, the government authorized a special alloy of 56% copper, 35% silver, and 9% manganese. These silver nickels, as collectors now call them, were produced from mid-1942 to 1945. What makes the 1943 version of the Jefferson Nickel especially interesting isn't just the composition, though. It's the tiny details, the mint marks, the wear, the strike, and in some very rare cases, errors, that can skyrocket a nickel's value from pocket change to an absolute jackpot. For example, if you take a close look at the reverse side of a 1943 Jefferson Nickel, you'll often find a large mint mark above Monticello, a sign that the coin was made during the war years using that silver alloy. Coins minted in Philadelphia carry a large P, Denver nickels are marked with a D, and San Francisco nickels show an S. Among these coins, the Philadelphia Mint produced the most, but that doesn't mean all of them are common. On the contrary, certain minting errors, combined with near-perfect condition and extremely low circulation, make some of these nickels unbelievably valuable. And that brings us to the true gem of this video, the rarest and most coveted version of the 1943 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so pristine and unusual that it has become the stuff of legend among collectors. One of the factors that makes a coin stand out is its grade. Most coins that pass through thousands of hands over decades suffer scratches, nicks, and wear that devalue them in the collector's world. But every once in a while, a coin is discovered in an almost untouched, mint state, sharp details, reflective surfaces, and no signs of human handling. Combine that level of preservation with a unique year like 1943 and you're looking at something truly extraordinary. But rarity isn't the only thing driving the price. The mystery and history behind the 1943 nickel add to its allure. Some believe that a few of these nickels were accidentally struck using leftover nickel planchets, the metal blanks used before silver was introduced into the wartime mix. Others point to unusual die varieties, including doubled dies and repunched mint marks, as the real reason certain coins have become so sought after. Over the years, collectors have scoured coin shops, estate sales, and flea markets in hopes of finding that one elusive Jefferson nickel that could change their lives. And for good reason, because hidden among the millions of ordinary nickels out there exists a handful of 1943 Jefferson nickels so rare and so perfect that their value has reached astonishing heights in auctions and private sales. Imagine the thrill of finding one in a collection you inherited from a relative, or buried at the bottom of an old coin jar. It's the kind of dream that keeps numismatists, that's coin collectors, hunting year after year. And when you understand what to look for, like a clear date, a strong strike, a visible mint mark, and minimal wear, you might just discover that you've been holding on to a piece of American history without even knowing it. The Jefferson nickel may seem humble compared to gold coins or ancient currency, but its connection to World War II and its evolving design through the years make it a favorite among both new and seasoned collectors. And of all the Jefferson Nickels ever made, the ones from 1943 are among the most iconic, not just for their silver content, but for the stories they carry, of wartime America, of resourcefulness, and of hidden value waiting to be uncovered. So, how much could one of these incredibly rare 1943 Jefferson Nickels be worth today? Not just any old coin, but one in exceptional condition, with that magical combination of rarity, historic context, and collector demand? Well, brace yourself, because one such coin has been valued at an eye-watering, life-changing $125,000. Top 2. In the world of coins, sometimes the most unassuming pieces can hold the most unbelievable secrets. And if you've ever taken a glance at a simple nickel and tossed it aside without a second thought, today's story might just make you look at your change in a whole new way. Because hiding in plain sight is one particular coin that looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet carries a mystery that's anything but. We're talking about the 1964 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that has sparked fascination, obsession, and even controversy among collectors and historians alike. The 1964 Jefferson Nickel might not seem special at first glance. After all, it's one of the most common coins ever minted in the United States. In fact, the mint produced over 1 billion nickels that year. That's right, with a B. It was a time of high demand for circulating coinage, and the country needed as many nickels as it could get. But what makes the 1964 Jefferson Nickel so interesting isn't just how many were made, it's what happened behind the scenes during that year, and how a small handful of these coins have become numismatic legends. To understand the significance of the 1964 nickel, we need to dive into the historical context of the early 1960s. The U.S. was in the middle of a coin shortage. Silver prices were rising, and the mint was scrambling to keep up with demand. People began hoarding coins, especially dimes and quarters made of silver, and that put additional pressure on lower denominations like nickels. The government decided to take swift action. They ramped up production, struck coins in massive quantities, and even postponed the introduction of new coin designs. Now, here's where things get truly fascinating. While the composition of the 1964 Jefferson Nickel was still the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel, rumors began to swirl about experimental strikes, rare die varieties, and unusual errors that somehow made their way into circulation. And among the countless coins produced that year, a few exceptional specimens stand out like diamonds in the rough. What really gets collectors talking is the possibility that some 1964 nickels were struck using proof dies intended for special coin sets, or that some were produced in unexpected ways during the transition between mints and design modifications. Some theories even suggest that coins were struck at the Denver Mint with proof-like quality, despite not being intended for collectors at all. These coins exhibit sharp details, mirrored surfaces, and almost flawless craftsmanship, the kind of quality that's nearly impossible to find in everyday pocket change. Then, there are the errors. Oh yes, the errors. From double die obverse to repunched mint marks, the 1964 nickel is a playground for coin experts who love to hunt for anomalies. One of the most famous varieties includes a coin with a doubled date, or letters that appear to be shadowed, a mistake made during the minting process when the die strikes the planchet more than once, slightly misaligned. These imperfections, ironically, are what make the coins so perfect in the eyes of collectors. And then there's the condition, the grade of the coin. While millions of nickels from 1964 exist, almost all of them have lived hard lives. They've been spent, lost, dropped, scraped, and passed through thousands of hands. Very few have survived in near mint condition, and finding one with absolutely no wear, deep reflective surfaces, and razor-sharp detail is like striking gold. That level of preservation is almost always found only in proof sets or specially handled coins, which is why when a 1964 Jefferson Nickel in perfect condition is discovered, it sends shockwaves through the numismatic world. There's also something inherently nostalgic about the 1964 nickel. It was the last year before major changes came to U.S. coinage. In the following years, silver was removed from dimes and quarters, coin designs were adjusted, and production methods evolved. The 1964 nickel became a kind of turning point, the end of one era and the beginning of another. That sense of historical importance only adds to its mystique. But here's the real kicker. Despite being one of the most commonly produced coins in American history, a very small number of 1964 Jefferson Nickels have surfaced in such exceptional condition, with such rare characteristics, that they have completely shattered expectations at auctions. These are not just coins anymore, they are artifacts, pieces of American history that have survived the decades in pristine form, untouched by time. So, before you brush aside that old nickel you found in a drawer or hidden inside an old coin jar, take a closer look. Check the date. Examine the details. Because it just might be one of those elusive pieces collectors dream of. A coin that, while looking nearly identical to millions of others, stands out in all the right ways. And if you're lucky enough to come across one of these incredibly rare 1964 Jefferson Nickels, one with exceptional condition, remarkable strike quality, and perhaps a hidden error, you might just be holding a treasure in your hands. A treasure that has been valued at an astonishing $105,000. Top 3. In a world where treasure hunts often feel like something out of a movie, it might surprise you to learn that some of the most valuable treasures can be hiding right inside your pocket. And no, we're not talking about gold bars or rare gemstones, we're talking about coins. More specifically, the often overlooked yet historically rich Jefferson Nickel. Today, we're zeroing in on one specific year that holds a surprising twist, 1973. At first glance, a 1973 Jefferson Nickel might seem like just another 5-cent piece, but dig a little deeper, and you'll uncover a story filled with rare varieties, unusual minting errors, and the kind of value that could leave you speechless. Now, the Jefferson Nickel has been a fixture in American currency since 1938. With its familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front and his Virginia estate, Monticello, on the back. Over the decades, the design has undergone subtle shifts, but the basic look remained the same for decades. The year 1973 wasn't marked by war or dramatic changes in coin composition, unlike some earlier years. It wasn't a silver coin, and it wasn't the first or last of a design. And that's what makes its hidden value even more intriguing, because the most valuable 1973 nickels owe their worth not to rarity in production, but to mystery, minting anomalies, and an almost perfect state of preservation. The 1970s were a time of rapid change in the United States. Inflation was on the rise, and coin collectors were becoming more aware of how minor minting differences could lead to major increases in value. During this era, the U.S. Mint was producing coins in massive quantities. In fact, over 400 million Jefferson Nickels were struck in 1973 alone across different mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. With that kind of volume, it's easy to assume that all 1973 nickels are common. But among the hundreds of millions, there are a few that stand apart, coins that contain unique characteristics only discovered by the most dedicated collectors. Let's talk about what makes a 1973 nickel potentially worth far more than its face value. First and foremost, minting errors. These are unintentional mistakes that occur during the coin production process, and they're like gold to coin enthusiasts. One well-known type of error is the double die, where parts of the design, like the date, the word Liberty, or Jefferson's profile, appear to be slightly duplicated or shadowed. This isn't something the average person notices, but to a collector, it's a sign of something rare and valuable. Then there are off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin, or planchet errors, where the blank metal disc is flawed before it's even struck. Another highly sought-after variety involves nickels that have been struck on the wrong metal planchet, such as one intended for a penny or a foreign coin. These kinds of coins are incredibly rare and can fetch enormous prices at auctions. But even without a dramatic error, condition alone can dramatically affect the value of a 1973 Jefferson nickel. Most of the nickels from this time have been through decades of use. They've been in pockets, dropped on sidewalks, rattled in vending machines, and sat in change jars. Very few have survived in what collectors call mint state, meaning no signs of wear, strong detail, and a sharp, clean strike. And within the mint state category, there's another level entirely, full steps. A full steps Jefferson Nickel is one where the steps of Monticello on the reverse side are perfectly visible, uninterrupted, and sharply struck. It might sound like a small detail, but that tiny architectural feature is one of the hardest parts of the design to strike cleanly. Most nickels, even brand new ones from the bank, show blurred or incomplete steps. So when a 1973 nickel surfaces with full steps, it's not just rare, it's exceptional. And that brings us to the heart of why some 1973 nickels have reached legendary status in the coin world. It's the combination of a nearly flawless strike, high-grade preservation, and sometimes an unexpected mint error that elevates an ordinary 5-cent coin into a true collector's dream. These coins are often discovered in old collections, rolls of coins saved for decades, or hidden away in forgotten bank boxes. The thrill of finding one of these gems is what drives collectors to keep searching year after year. But let's not forget the historical and sentimental value behind these coins. The 1973 Jefferson Nickel is more than just metal, it's a piece of American history, minted during a time of cultural shifts, economic uncertainty, and growing fascination with the artistry of coin design. It connects us to a past that feels both familiar and distant, reminding us that even the smallest objects can carry the greatest stories. So, what's the takeaway here? Don't overlook the simple nickel. Don't assume that because a coin looks common, it isn't worth anything. Because tucked away in a drawer, hiding in a coin jar, or resting unnoticed in a family collection could be a 1973 Jefferson Nickel that breaks all expectations. And if you happen to come across one of these ultra-rare, mint condition, full steps, or error-stamped 1973 Jefferson Nickels, you could be holding something worth an extraordinary $88,000. Top 4. Sometimes, the most unexpected things turn out to be the most valuable. That's especially true when it comes to coins. Every day, millions of people handle change without even thinking twice. Nickels, dimes, quarters, passing from hand to hand, slipping into wallets, falling between couch cushions. But what if I told you that one specific nickel, a 5-cent coin minted in 1975, might be worth more than a luxury car? What if, sitting quietly in a jar of old change or tucked into a forgotten drawer, there was a Jefferson Nickel that could change your life? Let's dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in American coin collecting, the 1975 Jefferson Nickel. On the surface, it looks just like any other coin. It features the familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with the word Liberty arched beside him and the date, 1975, sitting clearly beneath. On the reverse side, you'll find Monticello, Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate. The design is classic, clean, and unchanged for decades. So what could possibly make this everyday nickel stand out from the rest? The answer lies in the details. Details that most people never notice, but that coin collectors obsess over. You see, while 1975 wasn't a year of war, metal shortages, or sweeping coin redesigns, it was still a year full of small minting mysteries. Over 400 million Jefferson Nickels were struck that year between the Philadelphia and Denver mints. That's a staggering number, which leads most people to assume that all 1975 nickels are common and worth exactly 5 cents. But that's exactly what makes the few rare examples from this year so exciting. When it comes to coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how many coins were produced, it's about how many were produced correctly, and how many survived in pristine condition. And that's where the 1975 Jefferson Nickel begins to shine. Among the hundreds of millions produced, a select few left the mint with unusual characteristics, errors, misstrikes, and perfect full-step details that set them far apart from the average circulation nickel. Let's talk about those full steps for a moment. On the back of every Jefferson Nickel, beneath the image of Monticello, are a set of steps leading up to the building. On most coins, these steps are blurry, incomplete, or almost invisible. But when a coin is struck with extra precision, and the die is in perfect condition, those steps appear sharp and complete, what collectors refer to as full steps. A 1975 nickel with full steps is incredibly hard to come by, and when it's found in mint state, meaning untouched by circulation, it becomes a top-tier collectible. But it doesn't stop there. Some 1975 nickels display strange and fascinating errors, double dies, where parts of the design appear doubled or shadowed, off-center strikes, where the design doesn't sit properly on the coin, and even cases where a nickel was accidentally struck on a blank meant for another coin. These minting anomalies are extremely rare, and they transform an otherwise ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Now imagine finding a 1975 nickel that combines several of these traits. It's in mint condition, it has crisp, full steps on the reverse, and it contains a unique error. That coin doesn't just belong in a collector's album. It belongs in an auction house, where serious collectors are willing to pay serious money for a chance to own it, and the stories behind these valuable coins are always captivating. Some have been discovered in forgotten rolls of coins tucked away in family safes. Others have surfaced in estate sales or flea markets, sold by people who had no idea what they were holding. In every case, the discovery feels like finding a needle in a haystack, a tiny piece of metal with a story, a mistake, or a perfection that gives it immense value. The Jefferson Nickel itself has become a symbol of durability and design. It's one of the longest-running coin designs in American history, and collectors love it not just for its aesthetic, but for the hidden surprises it occasionally offers. And the 1975 version, despite flying under the radar for so long, has become one of the standout years thanks to its scarcity in high-grade examples and the unique minting quirks that make some versions incredibly sought after. So, what does all this mean for you? It means that next time you come across a handful of change, take a second to look more closely. Especially at your nickels. Look for that 1975 date. Look at the detail on Monticello. Are the steps visible? Is there something odd about the lettering or the rim? You never know, one small observation could lead you to a major discovery. Because among those millions of nickels produced in 1975, there are a rare few that collectors dream about, coins so perfectly preserved, so uniquely struck, and so historically valuable that they've fetched an unbelievable price. And yes, that price has been recorded at an astonishing $81,000. Top 5. Every day, millions of coins pass through our hands. We drop them into tip jars, slide them into vending machines, or toss them into the bottom of our bags without a second thought. But what if one of those small, seemingly ordinary coins could be worth a fortune? What if a simple 5-cent piece, one that you might have dismissed as pocket change, turned out to be a hidden treasure? Today, we're turning our spotlight onto the 1990 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that might look like every other nickel, but hides secrets that could make it worth thousands. The Jefferson Nickel has been part of American currency since 1938. It features the unmistakable face of Thomas Jefferson on the front and his iconic home, Monticello, on the reverse. It's a design Americans have seen for generations. By 1990, the Jefferson Nickel had already been circulating for over 5 decades. That year, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced hundreds of millions of nickels. On the surface, it seems like a year where nothing unusual happened, but sometimes, that's exactly where the surprises are found. In 1990, the U.S. Mint was pushing hard to meet demand. Coins were being struck around the clock, and in such high numbers, even the smallest mistake could slip through the cracks. Most coins, even if technically flawless, would go straight into circulation. That means dings, scratches, and wear from years of use. Very few coins were pulled aside or preserved in high-quality condition, and that's where the story of the valuable 1990 Jefferson Nickel begins. You might wonder, what could make a coin from such a recent year special? The answer lies in 3 critical areas: condition, detail, and errors. Let's start with condition. Coin collectors, or numismatists, are obsessed with the state a coin is in. A coin graded as mint state has never been circulated. It shows no signs of wear, only the faintest marks from the minting process itself. Among these mint state coins, there's a small group that stands above the rest, those with what's called full steps. On the back of every Jefferson nickel, the steps of Monticello are a subtle but critical detail. Most nickels don't show them clearly. The strike isn't strong enough, or the dies were worn down, causing the steps to blend together. But if a 1990 Jefferson Nickel shows 5 or 6 full, sharp steps leading up to the building, and the rest of the coin is in mint condition, that's when collectors start paying attention. But there's more. Even rarer than a full step specimen is a coin with an error, a flaw that occurred during the minting process. Errors can take many forms. There are double dies, where letters or numbers appear to be shadowed or stamped twice. There are off-center strikes, where the coin's image is visibly misaligned. And there are even coins struck on the wrong type of blank, called a planchet. Sometimes a nickel gets stamped on a penny blank, or even a foreign coin blank. These kinds of errors aren't just mistakes. They're accidental art, rare quirks that collectors love. The 1990 Jefferson Nickel is particularly interesting because it's from an era where the minting process was supposed to be more controlled and precise. So, when an error does surface from this year, it's even more surprising and more valuable. A perfect storm of rarity, timing, and preservation. Now think about how many 1990 nickels are still out there. Tens of millions? Probably more. Most are worn, scratched, and tossed aside as common change. But a very small number have been discovered in near-perfect condition. Coins that were pulled from circulation early, protected, or simply forgotten in a roll for decades. These nickels are crisp, clean, and almost untouched, and when you combine that with a strong strike and visible full steps, you're looking at something truly special. There's even more buzz among collectors when a coin from a common year, like 1990, ends up being so valuable. It means there are likely more out there waiting to be found. That kind of mystery excites the coin collecting world. The thrill of the hunt, the possibility that someone could stumble across a life-changing find in a handful of change, is what keeps collectors passionate and curious. Just imagine, that jar of nickels on your shelf, the one you haven't looked through in years, might be hiding a coin that looks almost identical to the others but is worth more than most people would ever expect. All it takes is one well-preserved, properly struck coin to change everything. So, next time you're going through your coins, slow down. Look closely. Pay attention to the date. Inspect the steps on Monticello. Look for sharp details, unusual markings, or a brilliant, untouched finish. Because even in the modern era, treasures are still hiding in plain sight, and if you're lucky enough to find a 1990 Jefferson Nickel in exceptional condition, with a flawless surface, crisp full steps, or a dramatic minting error, you could be holding something worth a staggering $50,000.